Proklamasi kami, bangsa Indonesia, dengan ini menyatakan kemerdekaan Indonesia. Hal-hal yang mengenai pemindahan kekuasaan dan lain-lain diselenggarakan dengan cara saksama dan dalam tempo yang sesingkat-singkatnya. Jakarta, 17 Agustus 1945, atas nama bangsa Indonesia, Soekarno, Hatta.
Indonesia is a country that has a very long historical timeline before achieving its independence. An archipelago that is famous for its natural beauty and rich in agricultural products and spices. Has been an attraction for other countries for hundreds of years. Trade was the beginning of Indonesia's introduction to other countries, especially European countries, as well as the beginning of the colonization. The Portuguese were one of the countries that successfully arrived in Indonesia, namely by anchoring their ships on Maluku Island in 1511, led by General Afonso de Albuquerque. Spanish colonization of Indonesia first began on November 8, 1521, when Spain successfully arrived on Tidore Island, led by General Sebastian Elcano. However, the presence of Spain was considered a threat by the Portuguese because it could disrupt their trade monopoly. Therefore, the Portuguese allied with the Kingdom of Ternate to fight against Spain, who was allied with the Kingdom of Tidore. This war lasted for almost a decade. Finally, on April 22, 1529, the Portuguese and Spanish agreed to sign the Treaty of Zaragoza, which stated that Spain had to leave Maluku and the Portuguese would remain in Maluku. The Dutch were the third nation to successfully land in Indonesia, precisely at the port of Banten on June 27, 1596. This expedition was led by a Dutch explorer named Cornelis de Laet. The Sultanate of Banten welcomed their arrival well, but the people did not like their arrival because they were rude and arrogant to the people of Banten. The people of Banten were finally able to expel the Dutch by fighting them. The Dutch returned to Indonesia and arrived in the Maluku Islands in March 1599, led by Jacob van Neck and Wybrecht van Werbrecht. This second Dutch presence marked the beginning of the establishment of the VOC, a Dutch trading company organization founded on March 20th, 1602. The VOC was founded to compete with the Portuguese and control trade routes. The great power of the VOC made the Portuguese finally surrender and leave the Maluku Islands in 1605. The VOC became a large and successful trading company in Indonesia. The VOC not only regulated trade routes, but also regulated the governments of the kingdoms in Indonesia so that all of them were subject to the VOC. As a result of the many costly wars and corruption, the VOC was declared bankrupt on December 31st, 1799. France was the fourth nation to arrive in Indonesia in 1806. The expedition led by Louis Napoleon Bonaparte succeeded in taking over Indonesia from the Dutch and ruled Indonesia until 1811. England was the fifth nation to arrive in Indonesia in 1811. Led by Thomas Stamford Raffles. France finally withdrew from Indonesia after England launched a major attack on France, which caused France to finally surrender. England ruled in Indonesia until 1816 and finally withdrew from Indonesia and handed the government back to the Netherlands. The Netherlands again took over the government of Indonesia and ruled until 1942. The Netherlands became the longest nation to colonize Indonesia because it had reached hundreds of years. Then Japan became the sixth nation, and the last nation to arrive in Indonesia and push the Dutch back from leaving Indonesia. The Japanese occupation was the shortest occupation compared to other occupations that ever occurred in Indonesia. This happened because of World War II, which took place from September 1st, 1939 to September 2nd, 1945. Japan wanted to control Indonesia so that it could utilize all of its natural and human resources to achieve their desired goals. However, Japan suffered a huge defeat due to the attack of its tough opponent, the United States, which sent 2 atomic bombs to Japan. The first atomic bomb destroyed the city of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, killing up to 166,000 people. Then the second atomic bomb destroyed the city of Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, killing up to 80,000 people.
Conditions and visibility over Hiroshima, over.
Weather is clear and visibility is excellent. Command, wind speed at altitude is within acceptable parameters for bomb release. Over.
Confirm payload status, Enola Gay, over.
Enola Gay to command. We are currently at 31,000 feet. Adjusting course for final approach. Over.
You are cleared to proceed, Enola Gay. We need to hit the Aoi Bridge for maximum impact. What's the payload status? Over.
Payload is ready for deployment.
Japan has fallen. Japan suffered a major defeat and decided to leave Indonesia to return to its country. On August 12, 1945, Marshal Terauchi, the commander of the Japanese army that occupied Southeast Asia during World War II, who was based in Dalat, Vietnam, contacted IR. Sukarno, Muhammad Hatta, and Rajaman Wediodiningrat to come to Dalat. This was intended to discuss Indonesian independence because Japan's condition had worsened greatly and promised to grant Indonesia independence. After the meeting took place, IRR, Sukarno, Muhammad Hatta, and Rajaman Wediodiningrat returned to Indonesia on August 14, 1945. They gave this information to the fighters from the young group and the old group. The young group wanted the proclamation of Indonesian independence to be declared as soon as possible, but the old group did not agree because it was considered too hasty and forced. The young group gathered and planned to kidnap IR, Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta, and take them to Rengas Dengklok. The young group chose Rengas Dengklok because the place was in the territory of the Indonesian fighters, so they could draft the text of the Proclamation of Independence there safely. On August 16, 1945 at 3 a.m., the young group picked up IIR. Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta then took them to Rengas Dengklok and drafted the text of the Proclamation of Independence there. Then Ahmad Soebarjo from the old group had received information about their whereabouts and decided to pick them up from Rengas Dengklok to go to the house of Admiral Maeda, one of the Japanese military leaders who decided to support Indonesia, to plan the Proclamation of Independence and type the text of the proclamation, which was done by Sayuti Melik. The next day, August 17th, 1945 at 10 a.m., the text of the Proclamation of Independence was finally read, which was attended by the fighters in the community. The news of this proclamation was spread via radio broadcast so that it could be heard by the entire Indonesian community. All people in Indonesia rejoiced at this news and raised the Indonesian flag in their respective regions.
Proklamasi kami, bangsa Indonesia, dengan ini menyatakan kemerdekaan Indonesia yang mengenai pemindahan kekuasaan dan lain-lain diselenggarakan